What we have on top of that is, in the UK, it's the Privacy and Electronic Communications Regulations, which is based on another European-wide law. But that isn't, and that's the law that gives us the requirement to get consent to send direct marketing, unless you're relying on opt opt-in, or the requirement to place cookies on someone's device. So from the 25th of May, to send direct marketing or to place cookies, your consent for those has to be to the standard of GDPR. But if you don't need consent to use someone's data for building a profile or something, you do not need to get consent. The GDPR doesn't change the situations in which you need to get consent. It just changes the standard when you do have to get consent, even if that standard is under PECA. So what I think is important is that the first thing to do is to think, if you're thinking about consent and what data you can use after the 25th of May, you need to think in part about when you need consent. Of course, you don't want to take that too far, and I think that's really what the second quote here is all about. You don't want to go so far that you're just trying to avoid getting consent for placing cookies or for sending, marketing emails to customers. Ultimately, those are fairly hard obligations, and you're going to need to comply with them. But there's no need to get hooked up on the idea of everything needs consent under the GDPR. The GDPR explicitly says, it's one of the recitals, 71, maybe not, that relying on your legitimate interests is appropriate for doing direct marketing, particularly in the context of things like online behavioral advertising. So at any stage of the digital marketing supply chain, whether you're a publisher, whether you're an ad network or something, you need to make sure that in the first place you know when you need consent, and you also need to know when you don't need consent. With 71 days to go, the top priorities, and really there's two buckets I'd put them into. Firstly, it's the things that are easily visible. A regulator is much more likely to knock on your door at 8 o'clock in the morning and say, we'd like to see what you're doing, if your public-facing privacy notice doesn't have all the things that GDPR requires, if your consents are obviously don't contain all the elements required for GDPR. And secondly, it's the stuff in the background. It's the corporate accountability measures that help compliance work on a day-to-day basis. The reason for that is it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Even if you're not fully 100% compliant, having that story to tell, having that policy in place that's slowly being rolled out, that's the sort of thing that the regulators are looking to see, so that even if you're not there, there is a clear path towards getting to full compliance going forward. I think the two, to talk about the visibility points, the two main ones, as I said, are transparency, so privacy notices, and consent. So, there's the various bits of information that you need to put in privacy notices. Your lawyers will be on top of that. Thinking about what legal basis you're using data for. Is it always consent? Probably not, given the high standard of consent, and in a lot of cases, given the high standard of consent. You need to think about who you're sharing data with, and this is hugely important in the digital marketing space. I've got a number of clients who run affiliate marketing networks or are part of large display marketing networks, and getting a sense of what the sorts of businesses that they share data with. Even if you don't list every single company that you're sharing data with out, giving enough information to make it meaningful to anyone who's reading it is important. So I think what this all goes to is in the background, making sure that you understand what your data flows are, where you're getting data in from, where you're sending out to, and that applies across the chain of marketers, publishers, and ad networks, and anyone else in between. One of the things that I think is going to come into play a lot more in the next few years is about retention. And I think this is actually something that you can see as an opportunity. A lot of companies in the past have taken the attitude of, we need this data to market, so we're going to keep it and we're going to use it forever. The requirement of the GDPR and the possible fines around it is really getting a lot of clients I see to think about how long they're keeping the data they need for marketing and how long it's actually useful.